Welcome to the show, Brain Health Unchaining Your Pain. And I am really, really excited because we're live on the show today with the awesome Daniel Mangena. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Despite all the things that happened, we had one thing going over. The front desk trying to walk in. I'm trying to tell them to go away while we're trying to go live. This is what being live is all about. Live, real life. People
Exactly. This
walk
is just
in.
the reality of life.
This is reality. Oh my God. But here we are. So happy to
And
be
who
here.
knows
Thank
what
you for
will
having me.
happen for me? I have a
Who knows?
3.5-year-old
Oh
upstairs
God.
who could walk in.
Okay. Who could walk in with their diaper off? Who knows what's going to happen? There we go.
Hopefully she's fast asleep.
Hopefully.
She's fast asleep. So for those people that are listening don't know who Dan is, he is a successful entrepreneur, best-selling author, podcast host to Do It With Dan and Beyond Success, and a life and business transformation coach and an international public speaker. He's also from the UK, like myself, although maybe not in the UK at the moment.
Get
He's helped,
Hooray!
or from old Blighty, as we might like to say.
Exactly.
He's helped thousands of people across the globe achieve wealth mastery and live truly abundant lives. He's featured on CNN, CBS, Fox, the Jack Canfield Show, and also in Forbes and Entrepreneur magazine. And his mission is to spread his teachings worldwide with the intention to spearhead an evolutionary uplift in universal consciousness by awakening people to the importance of their unique role and enabling them to manifest their dream life. And oh my God, goodness, is that such an important thing to do for people in today's world. Welcome.
Thank you. Really happy to be here. It's been a funny old road, but we made it.
You made it, and you're excelling from it as well, which is what is important in sharing your learnings from your experience to help people really dream, believe, plan, and do, and accomplish their dreams and beyond that. So I'm really excited for you to share your journey. But before you dive into that, I'd love to know what is optimal brain health for you personally. What does it mean for you?
Well, I think optimal brain health as an idea doesn't really have a home unless we have some kind of intentionality to mark it against. Because something can only be optimal if it's being optimized to something, and then we can grade how optimized it is. And so it comes down to the intentionality. What am I trying to do? Now, the brain is pillar. It's pillar to us being able to function effectively in the world. And so really, brain health is, when we're talking about this question of optimal brain health, we're looking at my life as a whole. What's the vision that I have for my life? And does my brain have the level of functionality that supports me in doing that? Am I giving it the right nutrients? Am I giving it the right rest? Am I keeping it in the right environment? Am I giving it the right inputs to support me living that life I want to live?
Do you know, I absolutely love that, because not many people talk about the functionality of my brain. Is it helping me get the life that I want? Often people focus on aspects of the whole life system, but don't necessarily link in totality the importance of our brain in the whole system of life and our future intent and the dreams that we have, which is really so fundamental to helping us get the best out of our life. I'd love to know where your story started, where that really wasn't the case for you, where you weren't getting the best out of your life, where you weren't able to reach the dreams that you had for yourself, or perhaps you didn't feel you were entitled to dream.
So my life was a weird one because I didn't start in a crap place. I kind of got there by myself and had to dig myself out of it. So my parents are immigrants. They moved to the UK in the 70s from Zimbabwe. Then it was Rhodesia, Southern Rhodesia. I was the first of my siblings to be born in the UK. My older brother and sister were born in Zim and moved when they were like 2 and 3 years old, or something like 2 and 4.
Yeah.
And so my parents very much education, education, education. Born and raised in East London, education, 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 and go to church. And against the backdrop of that, I was able to kind of build some success quite young. I taught myself to make computers when I was 13 years old. I incorporated my first limited company when I was 16. I was doing little deals with
Wow.
that. And then I made my first million when I was 19. And then I'd lost it all
Wow.
not long after turning 20. Um, and I went and built up some more again, and then lost that again. So by 23, I'd made and lost everything twice. And then I found myself in rock bottom, because the funny thing was, after losing everything the first time, I wasn't really that phased or flustered. I kind of dusted my shoulders off and was like, okay, I'm gonna go and do it again. But the second time did knock me for six. I ended up in a deep state of deep suicidal ideation, and just in a really, really dark place. And then was able to pivot out of that and rebuild. And in that rebuilding, I was living in a crappy bed sit in Watford town that was £80 a week, that I had to leave in the end because rain was coming through the light bulb was coming through the roof and going through the light bulb, and the landlord wouldn't do anything, and I thought I was going to get electrocuted. So I ran away, and they wouldn't give me my deposit back because I refused. It was a crazy, crazy time, and it's so funny to
And
then see
quite
myself.
common, in housing,
Yeah.
that they're not necessarily maintained to the standard that you'd
No.
expect it to
Or the one
be.
that's safe and habitable, right? It was literally a slumlord situation. So look at it now. I'm looking at the Sea of Cortez out of my window. I live in sunny Mexico, and I live my best life. I live on the beach, near the beach, and I get to do what I want, and to do so joyfully. I've got a beautiful family, all of the things. I work as and when I want to work, but that journey did require me to go through some challenges, to go through some dark times. And people love to talk about the mind, my mindset,
Yeah.
mindfulness. But people, I think, very easily lose sight of the physical components of all of these things. They talk about spiritual practices, but what actions do you take? And you speak about mindset. But what about the brain, the organ that actually is the one with which we engage with the mind and with everything else? I think
Yeah.
I was brought into an understanding about the importance of brains about 3 years ago. A friend of mine kind of clued me up. I was like, oh, wow. Okay, you're not having enough rest. Your body's not going to function properly. If your body's not functioning properly, the chemicals and hormones in the body aren't going to be optimal. Then you're not going to have the right ability to think. Your emotional state's going to be off. Then what you manifest is going to be off. It's a real solid partner to have on side, your brain.
Yeah.
And it does require that we give it some attention for it to be so effectively.
No, I absolutely agree. And going back to your relationship with computing is, we spend a lot of time, certainly in the coaching world, focusing on the software, but just what could be a very tiny aspect of the software that we see that's operating in the foreground. But we don't necessarily take the time to look at the hardware that is our brain, how our brain is actually functioning. And with it, that hardware then allows our software to run fast or slow. And sometimes the hardware is really efficient and really good, and it's the latest and greatest. And everybody has a different hardware in their head. And sometimes it's not working because it's got dust in it. It hasn't been upgraded. It hasn't been looked after. It's been parked. It's had a leaky light bulb. It's got the system wet, for example, and it's just not working. There's maybe some short circuits going on that's not allowing the operating system to work. But if we don't spend the time to look at both the hardware and the software, we're never truly going to get the best out of the system, which is our engine of life. And then the other thing that we don't tend to do is we don't tend to look at the background operating system, the background programs that are running in our mind or in our brain, which stem from birth or pre-birth, depending on any trauma you may have experienced or how you developed in the womb.
In the womb.
Yeah, and also you have the operating systems that you might have inherited that might get turned on based on your lifestyle or your environmental experiences, all of which have a huge part to play in how you show up and how your life transpires.
Yeah, and there's a short-sightedness, I think, that leads to this, and this focus on like this myopic obsession with like one thing. Like, oh, I've got to meditate. Yeah, I've got to read the book. I've got to work really hard. High performance habits. Yeah, but all of this is being done with your physical body, and your brain's the thing that's controlling all those operations. So if you're not taking care of that, you're going to be lost.
Yeah, exactly. I like to think of our brain as like the engine of life, and we can often spend time focusing on learning how to drive the car. So we put a lot of attention into getting the skills on how to drive it, but we might spend some time learning how to maintain it, but we might not look at the engine itself and lift the hood
ignore
up
the
and
engine
go,
light.
yeah,
or ignore the engine light.
And go, yeah, I don't need to worry about that. Low oil.
Exactly.
Don't worry. We'll
What
just
what is this oil?
Down.
What is oil? I know how to drive. That's all I need. It's like, all right, cool. But that's what people do.
Where do I put the oil in?
That's what we do. It's crazy. It's really crazy.
So I know you really skipped over quickly your transition into becoming a millionaire at the age of 19, which is a phenomenal accomplishment. I'd love to go through the success steps that led you to becoming a millionaire, and then and obviously how that all unraveled. Could you just take us on your journey a little bit slower to get you to the millionaire status?
So I was a precocious teen. I mean, I was learning to make computers at 13, and I found out when I was 27 that all of this precocious action was because I have Aspergers, and I didn't know. So my brain operates a bit differently. It functions a bit differently. But I literally manifested the whole thing. And that manifestation was a byproduct primarily of the fact that my mindset was razor locked on the idea that I'm going to be a millionaire. As young as I don't remember being conscious of a time when I didn't just know that that's what's going to happen. And it wasn't something I had to go and tell people I'm going to be a millionaire. She says, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Whether I was going to do it as an entrepreneur, whether I was going to make an invention, I just knew that that was what was going to happen. And so I started a business. Then a friend of mine joined, and a friend of mine's brother joined, and some of his friends, and we started a business that was very successful. Unfortunately, we didn't have the licenses for 90% of our activities, and so the government comes in and takes everything, and that was the loss. But there was a lot of learning that came from that. There was a lot of experience that came from that. If I hadn't lost everything, I probably would have still been the arrogant little Torag that I was at 19 years old, that thought that he knew everything and didn't need any help and guidance, right? So I can look back on the pain and the mess of all of that now with gratitude, because the capacity that I have now to A, be a nice human being, B, a nice human being that's a contribution, which gives me a meaning and a level of fulfillment within myself, but also sustainable. And that sustainability only comes from being supported, and the capacity and ability to be supported only came because of what I lost before. And so that's kind of the journey. It was really I just made it happen, is the long story short. But I mean, I was 16, 17 years old reading Think and Grow Rich. I was studying books like Psycho-Cybernetics in my teens, and ordering books from Nightingale, Conant and tapes, listening to stuff. And that's who I was. Some people are out trying to work out how they're going to get laid or get drunk. I was sitting working out how am I going to get paid. It was an obsession. And that obsession led to results. That's the long story short. So there wasn't some magical fairy dust. My brain was fine-tuned to the idea of being a millionaire. My actions followed suit. I just didn't have the experience and emotionally have the resilience to also hold that level of wealth. The second time it was, naivety again. Second time everything was stolen by people. But that comes from life experience. That's when you learn the skill to be able to deal with people, places, and things, so you can create and even hold anything, whether it's a relationship, health, vitality, purpose, a career, or money.
And then how did I know you had a massive shift at 20, and you had a hugely traumatic experience.
That was everything was lost. Everything was lost. That was what it was.
Okay. And what obviously you lost somebody stole it from you, or people.
The second time people stole everything.
And
first time government says thank you. Second time people said, if you don't mind, and I was left.
And took
I
it.
was left. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Wow. And that must have been hugely difficult because you obviously, if you think about the trauma, you'd already had the experience of it being taken from you by the
Yeah.
government,
Hmm.
and possibly legitimately.
Yeah.
And then the second time, it was still
Hmm.
taken from you. So you'd already had
Yeah.
that huge trauma tree
Hmm.
seedling had planted and
Hmm.
taken root in your mind. And
Mm.
and and obviously your mind was quite fragile because it was quite quick. It was
Yeah.
quite a
It
short
all, it all happened
period
in a
of
very
time
short
as
period of
well.
time. And there was an unraveling that happened after that, Dr. Ruth, because I did
Mhm.
actually end up, like I said, in the dark pits of suicidal ideation.
Mm.
And when I speak, it wasn't that, oh, I thought, oh, maybe I feel suicidal. The only reason why I didn't make an attempt is, we're in the UK. There's no guns around. If I had access to a gun, I wouldn't be here now. But when I looked
Wow.
at, for example, the idea of cutting my wrists, I've seen people with cut marks, and I didn't want to be the loser who ran around with cut marks. I didn't
Mm.
want to hang myself and someone have to cut me down and inconvenience people yet again. I didn't want to wake up in a hospital trying to with my stomach having been pumped if I tried to take pills. I didn't trust it. I was so I was so sure of my loser status that I thought I'd fail, and I didn't want to be a loser about anything else. And so
Wow.
my journey of growth actually was me wanting to de-loser myself. And in the delosering, I ended up inadvertently reprogramming my mind and ended up being a success. That's literally what happened. I didn't set out to be successful. I set out to
Yeah.
successfully commit suicide. That was my journey.
Wow. Wow. So you actually set yourself on a path to try and commit suicide, but in the process of trying to pull yourself out of the whole of I'm a loser and I don't want to lose at this battle,
Hmm.
I it actually turned it around. Where did that turnaround come? Because that's a
I don't know.
massively interesting
I
dichotomy, isn't it?
and this is the thing that makes me laugh. My gallows humor kicks in because I just remember it was early 2015, and I woke up. I'd moved to Highgate, like I shared with you when we connected, and I had a lovely home.
Yeah.
I had some nice things that I liked. I worked very little and was making a lot of money, and like, oh wow, that dark voice isn't here. That dark shadow isn't there anymore. It just wasn't there. And it's the first time that I remember just noticing that I was peaceful. I had great relationships with my
Mm.
family. I was working out and taking care of my body. Life was good. Things were
Mhm.
happening in a beautiful way. And I just had kind of drifted into choosing life. And that's when I
Wow.
decided, okay, this is what we're doing now.
And what was the
It's
I'm really, really intrigued about that drift because
mm-hmm,
often people have a kind of awakening, don't they?
mm-hmm,
Um, and it's something cataclysmic that makes them make a change.
mm-hmm,
But this is a really interesting fact that you drifted it from wanting death to actually enjoying life.
mm-hmm.
What was how did you then package that? Because obviously you discovered there were steps that you took. How did you work your way backwards to understand how that drift had occurred?
And that process of I'd been working on a book for many
Uh-huh.
many years, and originally I realized that the book was kind of therapy for me, dealing with the
Hmm.
shame of my failures and the mess that had been resulting, and just the whole thing. And I then committed to changing the idea about what that book was going to be, and really
Hmm.
sharing about the positive steps of the journey, and that those steps became my book, Stepping Beyond Intention. That's what it became. And that book breaks down the steps, or the phases that I moved through and continue to move through on my journey going forward also, which are: accept, that's radical responsibility for what shows up in my life;
Hmm.
clear, which is remembering that I can only make efficient choices that will create new outcomes in the present moment.
Hmm.
I can't be present in the moment if I'm caught up in shame or guilt or blame about the past, anxiety or obsession, or even excitement about the future. I need to be present
Hmm.
now. And then gratitude, which is gratitude in advance, developing a positive expectation about the outcomes that I want to move towards. And the fourth
Mm.
step, I think, is probably the most potent. And it's the one that's really served me the most and really serves the people that I get to serve. And that's listen, which is remembering I'm human. And as a result, I'm not going to be happy every day. I'm not going to be switched on every day. I'm not going to get it right every time. And the second that I can give myself compassion, patience, and love in the sight of that, that gives me a whole new barrel of power that I can use to keep moving, even when things don't look okay. So yeah, those are the 4 steps. And, there was different parts of my life that they've become more potent, and different studying and teachers and experiences and books that have guided me on those different steps. But now, over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, consistently, not just for myself, but for others, we've seen the evolution of moving through those steps, creating amazing outcomes for people.
Do you know, I really love that, because it's such a simple process as well, because we can create processes that can be so darn complicated.
Yeah.
Forget. So I just remind people what that was, is accept that you have a radical responsibility for every action you take in your life. And please do correct me if I'm wrong with what I've just noted, is to be clear and have efficient choices and be present in the moment for what you are capable of doing to affect your life going forward. Have gratitude in advance of the process that you're going to take, so that you can set yourself up for success and have that positive mindset. And also to listen and to listen to yourself and know that you're
thinking
human.
and feeling with awareness. Thinking and feeling with awareness.
And I love the fact that you say that, we're not all perfect.
Nobody's
we're
perfect.
not always going to show up as this perfect person with our super suit on, with the wind blowing in the background and the hair's all perfect, and and we're not always going to feel okay.
We're not always going to feel
days
okay.
when we're tired, and days when we feel really shitty.
Well, there's going to be areas of our life that we're stronger in and areas of our life that we're not. But that's when we can partner up and connect with other people and co-create experiences, and we can be their strength and they can be ours. Whether that's a friendship, a family member, a love interest, or a business partner, whatever. Like, we are by nature communal creatures. And when we allow that community to be really deliberate in its directivity of our capacity to connect and support each other, the game changes.
Yeah. Do you think we are, I love this sort of community, because we kind of seem to have lost that a little bit just generally as a society with the evolution of social media and the internet. But we can actually leverage the power of the internet to our advantage to build better communities rather than to create barriers. It actually can be a force for good if we have the right approach about it. Do you think we're doing enough, people are doing enough in that space to forge those partnerships? Because it can be a very competitive landscape, can't it?
I think the question of enough depends on A, the outcome, and B, your personal situation. And sometimes when we come to a level of awareness about where we are, we can see, oh, there is more that I could do, or there's something different that I can do. But that does still require some intentionality. It does require some mindset. It does require some deliberate and conscious connection. Otherwise, how can I answer that question? I can't, because I'm just fleeting around. Right. I do need to be in conscious relationship with things. And so I think that's kind of a catch-all question. It's going to be very difficult.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
Right. So everyone should ask themselves, what's going on with me? Where is it that I want to go? And then I can ask myself, am I doing enough? What level of connection do I want? Because we don't all want the same kind of connection. We don't all want the same depth of connection. We don't all want the same quality. Some people need more, some people need less. I've got Aspergers. I don't need as much, but I still do need. And we might not need it in the same way.
And your connection needs are different, as is everyone else's.
Just like Gary Chapman taught us this with love languages, that we all connect differently and in different ways and need different things from connection. But when we can come intentionally knowing ourselves, knowing our needs, then we can know, okay, these are the actions that I need to take. And then I can ask myself, am I taking enough efficient action that's meeting my needs? What's the result? Am I getting it or not? Okay, then I need to change what I'm doing or how I'm doing it.
I'd love to dive into that accept piece. Is that the first step of your process is around the time that you were 20? Was that the time that you were diagnosed, when you went on your journey of discovery, therapy, and reading all the books?
I was diagnosed later. I was diagnosed later. Yeah. I was diagnosed when I was 27.
Oh wow. Okay, so that's quite a bit later. And what was the journey between the crash and getting to the point where you were diagnosed with Asperger's?
So the diagnosis, the way that it came was hilarious because I've suffered with bouts of horrible insomnia since my teens. So I would go for weeks at a time without proper quality sleep. And it would happen every year to 18 months. It was like an annual occurrence. I wanted to come, but all right, cool. I'm not going to be sleeping now. And I would try natural remedies and stuff would normally what I do. But in this particular instance, it just wasn't working. That time in 2011, it wasn't working. Nothing was working. Chamomile tea wasn't working. The over-the-counter stuff wasn't working. All the hacks about, turning the lights off early and going to bed and whatever wasn't working. So I went to the doctor and the doctor prescribed me Zopiclone, which is a very, very, very strong sleeping tablet. And in the UK, they're actually only allowed to prescribe 3 because it's so addictive. So he gave me the 3. He said, take 1, you'll be fine. If you're not, take another half. Don't take any more than 2. By then you'll be knocked out anyway. I took 1, took a half, took another half. And not only was I not tired, I was wide awake. So I go back to the doctor. I said, right, we need something else because it's not working. And he's like, well, if this hasn't worked, then it's not medical. You need to speak to someone. There's something else going on. And it just so happened that Dr. Helen McEwen, who he referred me to, her primary job was cognitive behavioral therapy, specialized in working on adults with autism. So she saw all of the clues. She saw what was going on. And she kind of had a soft diagnosis and was doing she didn't tell me what she was doing. She was sort of poking around and working it out. And then she gave me the test. And I scored 27 out of 54, I think it is. 16 is the top end for you to be mainstream. Anything over 16, you're on the autistic spectrum. 32 is a score where they put you in a special school. So I was just off special school level. That's the depth of Asperger's that I've got. And so she supported me, gave me a lot of strategies and tips and a lot of processes and stuff I can use in order to function. My sleep function returned. Not only that, I've been able to build proper relationships with people and able to thrive and to make the most out of my superpowers that come as a result of being on the spectrum as well.
Yeah, that's amazing, because I know a lot of people get they get the diagnosis and then it becomes can become a bit debilitating for them by not only having the diagnosis, but the actually having Asperger's can be quite difficult if you don't have the right tools or advice to deal with it. And
it can be debilitating.
Yeah, and people with Asperger's are incredibly sensitive to toxins and to chemicals that go into your brain, which is why many drugs don't work, because your brain works differently. And it's like having a super racing car that's highly tuned and wants to be on a race track all the time. And you can't put rubbish fuel in it because it's a racing car. And you have to really treat it with a huge amount of respect for the racing car to perform, because it's not Robin reliant.
I've not heard that in a very long time. It's not a Robin. A Robin, it is not. It has 4 wheels.
Which for those that don't know is a 3-wheeler that's like a moped on wheels with a chassis.
With a chassis. God.
So what were the big shifts for you? Because there'll be many people who may be struggling with Asperger's, and maybe they feel like they've got to, they're just not making progress. Like you just said, you're taking these sleeping pills and it wasn't making any difference. What were the big ticket interventions that really helped you take that cloak off and unleash your superpower of Asperger's and really get the best out of your brain?
Just knowing what your strengths are and playing to them. So for me, I can learn anything systemized. You give me something systemized. If it's got a step-by-step process that's clear, I will get it and I'll be able to do it. But it means that when I was getting horrible anxiety, I mean, I was suffering with severe social anxiety, general anxiety
Yeah.
for years, which is what was leading to my sleep issues.
Hmm.
Because if something isn't systemized, I fall apart.
Hmm.
So if I don't have steps to follow through, I'm going to fall apart. So guess what?
Hmm.
Where steps don't exist, I allow myself to be supported.
Hmm.
I get help. And as much as
Yeah. Do you know
possible, I
that's so
focus on things
important?
that can
Because
be
that's,
systemized.
do you know, and I love that the way you said it, because we can make it super complicated. But actually, knowing your strengths, like you've just said, and knowing where
Hmm.
you need the support where you don't have those strengths, and you don't want to have them, and you might not be able to have them, and we
Hmm.
can beat ourselves up and get frustrated
Hmm.
and anxious and stressed or depressed or any of the negative connotations of from a
Hmm.
brain health perspective, because we don't have something that somebody else
Hmm.
has. Or we can go, do you know what? You have this, I have this super skill, you have that super skill. Like you mentioned earlier, let's work together,
Hmm.
and then we can support each other and lift both people
Hmm.
up.
That's it. It's really simple when you think of it like that. It's not, it's really not this complicated process. It's, this is what I can do. This is what I don't have the capacity to do. Who has the capacity to do that? Can I offer them something in exchange? Can I remunerate them some way? Or do they want to do it? And let them do it.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the end of the day. Story's
And it
finished.
comes back to your first step, right, which you mentioned
Accept.
earlier, which is accept. Is
Hmm.
accept that we're going to be great at one thing, and we've got this superpower. You know, for you have this superpower, because I truly think it is a superpower, because you are a race car, but you have to
Hmm.
be on a racetrack to perform
Hmm.
well. You know, it's
That's
no
it.
good putting you on some country bumpkin road, because it's hugely irritating. Because you can't see where you're going. The hedges
Hmm.
are all in the way. Your wheels bump about all over the place, and you
Hmm.
just can't race as fast as you want to go. So it's
Hmm.
not the right, that's not the right environment for you. You
Hmm.
need a racetrack, which is,
Exactly.
having those processes in place.
Yep, that's it.
But you have to accept that you are a race car.
Exactly. And celebrate it.
And celebrate it. I love that. I'd love to dive into the fun facts,
Hmm.
which
Let's go.
which is, and I'm massively into systems, so I hope you can relate to this. So the fun facts is looking at the 5 pillars of brain health, and we
Hmm.
remember it by saying to ourselves, let's look at the facts. The
Hmm.
first pillar is our feelings. So this is
Hmm.
connecting with our emotions, because they drive our behaviors. And the second pillar is our actions. So F is for feelings, A is for actions. The third pillar is our connection, and that's connection
Hmm.
to ourselves, our internal connection with ourselves, and our external connection with others. The fourth pillar is our thoughts. What thoughts are we listening to, and are they serving us? And the fifth pillar is our surroundings, which is everything associated with outside of our personal space, our physical body and mind. And are our surroundings serving us, or are they hurting us? And that's everything from people to toxic chemicals, and non-conducive workplace or work environment, and so on. But let's go in from a fun perspective. So starting with feelings, what is, if you don't mind answering this question, the funniest or most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you?
I've got a lot of embarrassing things, to be honest. A lot, a lot of embarrassing things.
I have a lot
What
too. I'll share mine. I'll share
I-
some.
I've got this one. So I was at a night out. This is pre-diagnosis. I didn't know I had Asperger's at the time. I just knew I wasn't very good talking to girls. But there's this one time I was talking to this girl, and she was there, and we were talking, and it was happening. I was like, oh my god, the talking is happening. And I put my foot in my mouth in such. I tried to say something clever. I wasn't trying to say something clever. It was, I was talking as me, putting my foot in my mouth, and she was so confused by what I said. She didn't even say anything. She just went like this, and walked away. And my sister was right there, and she heard the whole thing, and she loves to tell everybody the story as embarrassingly as she can anytime she gets the opportunity to. It's really funny. So yeah,
Oh.
putting my foot in my mouth. So if my sister's listening to this, Lou, yes, it's the Bourneville story. Yeah, so that's one of the most. Yeah, don't ask. Don't ask. We'll be here for another hour, me trying to explain what I meant, and we might get there. But I was convinced that this was the sexiest thing to say, and it really, really wasn't. So there we go.
Well, at least you learned from it, you know.
No, I didn't. I didn't. I didn't.
Oh,
There were
you
more
didn't?
events of
Oh,
that kind. um,
no.
anyway, there we go. I've survived. I
Well,
survived
no,
it
you
at least.
survived. Thank you for sharing. I know,
Yeah.
just to share something back, is a funny thing that happened to me was I was out driving, going back to the driving analogy, and I got totally lost, had to go to a course. And then previously I bought my niece a map of the area. This is before the days of
Tom.
sat navs and stuff.
Hmm.
And I had to phone her up. She was about 8 at the time, and ask her if she could help me get to where I wanted to go by getting out this map I bought for her. My family thought that was completely hilarious. From my map
Hilarious.
reading skills were not sufficient at that time, and it always gets brought up from a family perspective. So I'm with you on those funny moments. Actions. What's the most rewarding or fulfilling thing you've ever done?
Oh, what I do now, I get rewarded and fulfilled every day. So making the leap to walk away from a successful business, not knowing what's going to be on the other side, I think that's definitely it.
Wow. And is there anything that you know, in terms of future reward, do you constantly, is there something that you're really looking forward to as your next step in life?
Just more of the same,
Uh-huh.
and just continuing to live life on my own terms. That's what I'm really looking forward to. Continue to live life on my own terms and to have the relationships, the resources, and everything that supports me doing that.
Yeah, I love that. Connection to
Hmm.
yourself. What is your
Yes.
most important value that guides you in life?
Um, does it make me feel good and bring no harm to others?
Ah,
Right. So
that's a really good
it's
one.
selfish. It's selfish with appreciation for the fact that I'm not the only one in my universe. So that's definitely a big one for me.
Well, I don't know if, it's self-love, isn't it? I don't know if it's selfish
Yeah,
because
but
you're
some
caring about
people.
other people.
Yeah, I mean, no, but I mean, if I had left the does no harm, if I just did what felt good, that may infringe on someone else, right? It feels good for me to run naked down the street. Yeah, that's against the law, mate, and not everybody wants to see you winky, right? So, right, but does no harm. Like it doesn't impact on the freedom of other people to do the same.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know, I really like that because, we can spend time um, focusing on, it goes back to you really looking at yourself as a whole, and we can spend time focusing on individual values, but you're taking a very holistic approach in terms of
Hmm.
what you want out of life. And
Hmm.
is it gonna, am I gonna feel great about it, and
Hmm.
doing what you love, which is so important. um Connection to others. Who's been your
Mm.
role model in your life?
When it comes to connection, my friend Chris Kelka, him
Hmm.
and his wife wrote a beautiful book called Relating Revolution, KRIS, Chris Kelka,
Hmm.
KELKAR. And the most powerful thing about that book that I love is that it reminds us that it only takes one of us to change a relationship.
Hmm.
Like if I change, then the substance of a relationship can change. So it just really shifted the way that I looked at relationship. It stopped being about what I'm getting other people to do and became about how I connect and pour into a relationship. And that will dictate what I get back.
Mm. I think that's so important because we can easily put our attention on the other person and not really own and take ownership
Hmm.
of the responsibility that we have in terms of influencing that relationship. And I kind
Mm.
of like to see relationship as it's the dynamic between two people. And so
Mm.
when you've got that connection, that it has to work, it has to work both
Hmm.
sides. Otherwise, it's
Hmm.
just communication, which could go
Hmm.
anywhere. But the
Exactly.
relationship is that connection piece. And so if you're
Mm.
truly connected, you know, there could be multiple connection points to the other person, and some of them may be serving you and some of them may be hurting you or the other person. And you have to do that really deep dive, don't you, often, to make sure
Agreed.
that relationship is really working and those connections are working together rather than against each other.
Exactly.
So thoughts, because I know these can really influence our emotions and our feelings. What stupid or crazy thought have you often told yourself in the past that isn't true?
That's people care. Not people care about you, but people care about what you're doing. Like, even when I look at the whole thing of suicidal ideation, I was actually on the brink of taking an action because of my belief about what other people would thought about my failure and me being a failure, and that I had no value intrinsically anymore because I was such a failure and everyone was going to say I'm a failure. And I remember many years later when it started looking like it was trying to creep up again. And my friend
Yeah.
looked at me and he goes, Dan, have you murdered anyone? No. You raped anyone? No. Troubled little children? No. Selling drugs? No. Then nobody really cares. It's like, oh. And then I saw this meme, and there's this meme of this guy looking up at the heavens, and he's like, Lord, save me from my haters. And it's got the thing of like the Michelangelo painting or whatever.
Yeah.
And God saying, nobody's thinking about you, pointing at him. Like, it's like, we've got this obsession that we've got all these people that are focused their intent, their energy and thoughts on us. And for the most part, people are just trying to get on with their day and
Yeah,
probably
they're
obsessing over
more
thinking,
focused on what they need to do.
yeah, or thinking about someone else that they think is thinking about them. And we're all running on this illusion that somebody's thinking about us when really nobody cares all that much. And if we could just come back to focusing on, okay, if nobody else is involved, what do I want to do for myself? What do I want to experience? How do I want to show up? What do I want to contribute? It's a much healthier position to be in.
Yeah. And we can massively damage ourselves, can't we, with this thought that other people, we are not enough. It's ultimately the sort of core of it, and we are less than, and people are going to look down on us, and we feel that sort of internal shame associated with this perception that other people care, and therefore they place this not enough. You know, we've placed this virtual not enough concept, but it can happen to people in, you know, a childhood experience. Can say that can make someone feel not enough, or that or feel judged, and they've been judged in childhood, and then that manifests forward into their present day, and they're constantly replaying in their mind this past experience that they are being judged by somebody who does no longer exist, apart from in the remits of their memory.
It's crazy.
And we can do ourselves so much harm by replaying old programs that are not serving us. So
yeah, and it's just when you just drop it and you give yourself permission to just drop it, you can just be so freed up by all that energy that you bring back, and it's just a wonderful feeling. It really, really is.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we can expel a huge amount of energy trying to defend ourselves from something that doesn't actually exist.
Yeah, it's
which
crazy.
can be exhausting.
Well, that's what we do. Humans in
and
all
we
our
do it.
fabulous intellect.
Yeah. And was it that moment that you had that conversation with your friend that you realised you could just let it go? Or did
No, I still tried to argue about it. I still tried to argue it a little bit. It took a while for me to just be, oh yeah, I can just drop it. But I got there in the end. I think it's when I saw the meme, that's when it really hit home. I don't remember how much later I saw that meme, but when I saw that, I was like, oh wow, that's exactly what Jay was saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
I get it now.
Wow. And these are like, we like to call them ants, so automatic negative thoughts. There's like these programs that run in the background of our mind, and we don't pay attention to them, but they steal our energy, they steal our focus, they steal our, you know, progress in life. and they can really affect us and deplete us in so many different ways, both mentally and physically and emotionally and spiritually. So it can affect us at so many levels. I'd love to dive into the fifth pillar, which is surroundings. What is the most beautiful place you've ever visited, and what makes it so special?
Oh, I've been to some lovely places, but a place I really, really loved was Koh Phi Phi Island in Thailand. I could have stayed there forever. It was just too far from everything. It's the middle of nowhere. I remember when I ended up in Mexico, I was thinking, can I make it work? Just pack it up and go into Thailand. Could I go? I did try and see if I could do it. Victoria Falls as well, Zimbabwe, where my parents are from.
Oh, okay. I've not been there.
Shockingly beautiful. Yeah, shockingly beautiful.
Wow.
I also love the Cotswolds. I think there's just beautiful, beautiful greenery there. The Pacific Northwest, the trees there are so old. In the US, it's just beautiful. Yeah, I've been to beautiful places, but those are some of them.
And what inspired you to, obviously the Cotswolds in the UK, it's just north west of London, just give people a reference point. I think that's enough for a reference point for those that aren't in the UK. What inspired you to move to Mexico?
I came for 3 days and didn't leave.
Okay. Why didn't you leave? What made you stay?
I didn't want to go anywhere. Yeah. Okay. 3 days turned to 10 and then I didn't leave.
Because I'm interested that you mentioned all these wonderful places, and I actually thought that you would say Mexico.
Oh yeah, and then as well. But I mean, this is my everyday now. That was a bit of an obvious answer, but so I thought I'd share something a bit different than where I actually live. Where I live is also beautiful. The sun's out. It's gorgeous here, but yeah, I thought I'd share something a bit different.
And I'd love to dive back now into your life's journey, if you will. And I'd love to kind of dive back into, you had the diagnosis of Asperger's. How long was it? Obviously you met this amazing therapist who's involved with CBT and she gave you the tools. How long did it take you to really unleash your superpower and let go of all the chains and the aspects of your life that were holding you back, so you can really tap into that superpower inside your brain?
I think I continue to build that relationship and to deepen and develop that, but there were immediate effects. But the biggest shift, I would say, I think probably was, 3-4 years later, that when I sat and looked at, hang on a minute, look what's going on with the life that I'm living. But yeah, there was some immediate change, immediate shifts, but then big shifts and changes that were seen within a few years.
Wow. And what were the shifts that were super noticeable? Because you just mentioned big shifts and changes within
the
a few years.
anxiety was gone. The anxiety was gone. I was literally living daily with some form of anxiety, whether it's social or general. It was a very uncomfortable way of living. Like I said, it led to inability to sleep, just health issues, all sorts of ick that was going on. The ability to then go out and form connections, because I understood what was standing between me and having connections. All of these things, being able to build bridges of relationship with people that I wasn't able to do. I'm able to then deepen connection with family members that I wasn't able to do. So there were visceral
because your anxiety had a hold of you.
And not only that, pardon me, I knew what was stopping me have connection was I didn't know what it meant to have connection. And understanding that I didn't understand it meant that I could go and get to understand it and go and learn what these things were. And that was what it was. So it just changed the game for me. That diagnosis saved my life.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And was it just realizing that you had Asperger's? Was that like, oh God, thank the Lord?
Well, no, it was, I mean, knowing Asperger's, but when Dr. Helen was like, well, look at this, these are some of your skills that I've been witnessing with you. It's like, oh my God, look, I can just do that. I can just do that. Oh my God, that's why I do that. Oh my God, I could do that as well. I could do more of that. And then able to bring some intentionality to the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd like to kind of, because this is we're talking in mental health awareness week here in the UK. Obviously, it's Mental Health Awareness Month in the States, and every week needs to be Mental Health Awareness Week. To be fair, we all need to be looking at it from a daily basis. But in terms of, a lot of people who have Asperger's may feel that they're alone, or that's a battle that they're fighting by themselves. What advice would you give to anybody who is in that space where they're really struggling with their sleep issues, and nothing is, or they're really just struggling with social connection, just nothing seems to be working, and they just feel not enough, or just struggling with life in general? What advice would you give to anybody who's in that space?
You're always going to be in a prison if the answer is dependent on other people. And so I'm not saying to relish in being alone or to make yourself an island, but get okay with it being you. And then from that place, you can then start to build bridges with people. Because if you're going into attempted connection, needing that connection to be the thing that saves you, you've created a prison, and one that someone else is holding the keys for. But when it's like, okay, I accept that I may have some times of loneliness, I accept that not everyone's always going to get me, I accept X, Y, and Z, then from that place, I can go and form healthy bonds with people rather than bonds of need that are demanding of someone that they give me the energy that I need to save myself.
Yeah. I think that's such a powerful statement, because it comes back to owning who you are, and that huge acceptance piece is that we often spend so much energy trying to be who we're not, that we fail to leverage the superpower of who we are in that process. And we expend an enormous amount of energy doing that, and it doesn't actually help us get anywhere, but it devalues our own self in the process, and causes us potentially needless anxiety, because we haven't done that acceptance piece initially to say, this is me.
It's the foundation. It's the foundation of everything. Without it, everything falls apart. Everything falls on its face without that. It's really, really an imperative component.
And, in terms of the social connection piece that, can be such a huge issue for people with Asperger's, how did you overcome that? Was it purely self-help books? Was it getting people to support you? What were the key changes that really helped you overcome that struggle that you had previously experienced?
Well, first of all, now I know what I'm asking for patience from people for. It's like, hey, I'm going to put my foot in my mouth. I'm going to say some weird stuff. I may just need time by myself. I may just speak without the social niceties because I forgot about the whole packaging that needs to happen. That was number one. And B, I learned anything systemized. So I went and studied social dynamics and understood the function that was happening. And so what people are doing unconsciously, I just have a conscious relationship to. It's like, okay, understanding the power of pause, the importance of body language, the importance of eye contact, all of these things. Just went and learned them. And now I just do them consciously. That's it. and then you can start to let go and allow yourself to form natural bonds. But I can't form natural bonds with people if I'm in a space of anxiety. And so that gamification gave me the space to be able to understand, well, who are my tribe that I can connect with without all of the games and function? Okay. And now I can go and connect with those people. And that's what I do. There's less people, but deeper connection.
Yeah. And that's just systemizing it, is so important. Just generally, if you're trying to learn a new habit that is not natural to you, you have to, it can be really helpful when you systemize it and you break it down into bite-sized chunks. I'll just take I'm a kayak instructor. I haven't done it for a while, but I used to do instruction, and we'd break down the stroke that we would be teaching people into its component parts, so they could learn all the steps in order to achieve the stroke that we were looking for them to do. And it would take lots and lots of time for some people to get it. Some people needed the kinesthetic, the physical touch contact in order for them to learn it. Some people were good with just a demonstration. Some people were good with an explanation, and we all learn differently. But when you can break down the learning into a process that is right for you personally, then you're a brilliant example that you can fill the voids of the learning difficulties that you may have, but by that systemization of it all, which is brilliant. Dan, I have absolutely loved talking to you about.
Thank you. Me too.
Your life's journey and the experiences you've had, and I know you shared this incredibly powerful 4-step process, which I just want to reiterate because I think it's so fundamental, is the acceptance and then take radical responsibility for who you are, that having clear and efficient choices and presence in your mind about what you need to do to move forward in life, and gratitude in advance of the steps that you're going to take, which is the third one, and also listening and acknowledging that you're human and it's okay to have highs and lows. How can people get hold of you and learn more about what you do in helping people realize the dreams that they have in their life and their business, which I know you're so hugely successful with?
Just head to dreamwithdan.com. Dreamwithdan.com. Everything's there. Best place to find me.
And do you know, I think you're such a brilliant role model for people who have Aspergers and a superstar in every way. And I love the logo that you have, is like this shiny, this sort of star that sparkles so bright. Dream with Dan, to show that anything is possible if you put your mind to it, and also when you create the right process for yourself that can really get you to where you want to go. Thank you, Dan, so much for joining me on my show live to share your journey, share your experiences, your successes and your highs and lows, and just teaching us all that we're all human, and it's about getting the best out of our engine of life, which is our brain, and leveraging its power. So thank you.
Thank you.
So everyone, remember that this show is all about brain health, unchaining your pain. You are not stuck with the brain you have. You have the power to make it better and to optimize it and get the best out of your engine of life. Dan has been a fantastic example talking about his experiences. Now here we have a message from our sponsors. Thanks for listening.
To you by Wincheck Studios. We are an all-in-one educational platform for podcasters that revolutionizes how hosts leverage content to increase engagement with listeners, downloads, and income. We come together to focus on community, collaboration, and collective impact. For more information on how you can interact directly with our hosts, access exclusive live content with offers you can't get anywhere else from our official partners, join our purpose-driven community by visiting www.winject.com. If you're ready to build a career doing what you love, then we're ready to see you there.